The Oklahoma Sooners cornerback coach, it's not going to be who you think it's going to be.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Wins define the moment, putting in the work that defines you. Stay tuned for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. He's Jay Smith of Unfair Sports. I'm John Williams of Sooners Wire. And on today's show, we're going to ask the question, can the Oklahoma Sooners repeat their 10-2 season from 2025? Which 2025 recruits that signed with Oklahoma need to have breakout seasons in 2026? But we got to start with the news of the day. Jay Valai is off to Buffalo, which means we got a coaching search going on. The Oklahoma Sooners will be looking for a new cornerbacks coach, Jay.
Yeah, it's time that Oklahoma has to make that change. And, I'm as excited as I am for Jay Valai. I hate that it had to happen now because, a lot of people are trying to get settled. But at the same time, it's really just recruiting season. You know, coaches are out there doing visits. You've seen pictures if you follow on the socials. Our staff is out at high schools and they're at, kids' homes and they're all over the place. They're all over the country. We've seen the West Coast swing. We've seen the Midwest, the South. During the Senior Bowl, they were out in the South, spending time in Alabama, seeing some prospects that, right now we may land. But I digress from there. We now need to find a new DB coach. The good thing is that in this time, even with Valai having these conversations, you saw Brent Venables out with Coach Xavier Brewer, who's one of the defensive analysts that, works with the defensive backs. He's worked with Cheetahs. And so you have like a list of coaches to work with. And kind of as you said in the intro, though, John, it may be someone that we're not expecting because it appears and feels like Oklahoma may try to go with the more experienced route once again, which is a little bit opposite or even contrary to kind of the philosophy that BV has had in the past. And I'm wondering, is that a function of the Jim Nagy effect, or is BV trying to inject something new possibly into the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, it's going to be curious because you've got a guy in-house that seems like a pretty good fit and a pretty good option. Also, we've done the in-house thing, right? We've promoted a guy from an offensive analyst to offensive coordinator. It didn't really pan out. I think what we're going to see is due diligence at the very least, right? We're going to see Brent Venables, Jim Nagy, the coaching staff, Roger Denny now, who's a part of all of these decision-making processes as well. We're going to see them do a thorough search. It could be really easy to go with Xavier Brewer, and I think he'd be a really good option, a great option. He's a guy that is familiar with Brent Venables' defense. He knows what Brent Venables wants in cornerbacks. Yeah. I mean, he was a part of a lot of really good defenses at Clemson. That makes sense. At the same time, you don't want to limit yourself by just going with what could be the most obvious answer.
That's true. That's where the struggle comes in. Do you feel comfortable enough running with, like you said, the same person that you've had in the past, or would you prefer to, like I said, inject something new? Like, perfect example was having a conversation with somebody not too long ago about why the Chiefs would go back, Kansas City Chiefs would go back to bringing in Eric Bieniemy. And if you notice, the offense looked completely different when he wasn't there with the Chiefs, with Mahomes and all of them. And really the big thing that, we talked through was, it was like Bieniemy was the guy that would walk in and call people out for their BS. He would call people out for their accountability. He was the one that was always, all right, let's question this and make sure this is right. Or why aren't you getting a little bit more effort? Sometimes you got to have that person in there that's willing to do that. And sometimes it's an outsider that's willing to come in and really inject that mindset. Now, granted, for Oklahoma, this isn't a job that's going to be hard to fill. It's going to be one they've probably already had a ton of people reach out for and say, got agents saying, hey, I got a guy who would love to come up underneath this defense and be able to learn some things to be able to leverage for themselves for the future. So I don't think it's going to be tough, but the question I have, John, and how do you feel about bringing in another former Sooner as DB coach this time around?
It wouldn't bother me. I know that there are those out there that don't want to do that. They don't want to bring in old assistants or alumni. And I get that. I totally do. At the same time, I trust Brent Venables to hire the right guy, at least for the defensive side of the ball. Okay, the offensive coordinator thing, you had Jeff Lebby. It was pretty good. And then the Seth Luttrell, Joe John Finley situation didn't work out well. Not all their fault. All the injuries that piled up on them made it really, really difficult to call offense. Ben Arbuckle, I think, is pretty good. But defensive hires have been great. There has not been a bad defensive hire. You could make an argument maybe Ted Roof wasn't good, but it was necessary for the transition.
Yeah.
Every other defensive hire has been really good for Oklahoma. So I kind of trust him. So whether he's going to go with a guy that played for him, like a Dominique Franks, or an old assistant like a Chip Viney, like there are going to be names that are connected to OU that they're going to look at. But then there's going to be a name like a Mike Reed that's out there at Clemson right now. That's a name that could make sense as well. So again, this is the part where you don't want to limit yourself to a guy that you have in-house in Xavier Brewer, who again, I think would be a really fantastic option because you have a myriad of options. And if you say, hey, we got our guy, and you don't do your due diligence, you might miss out on something potentially better. Or at the very least, miss out on an opportunity to build relationships with somebody that you might want to bring in down the road too. That's another part of these interview processes that's important is you're building relationship, whether you end up offering a guy a job or not, you're getting a feel for who they are so that if down the road I have this job opening again, then I can circle back to that person and be like, hey, actually, I know last time it wasn't the right time. This time we want to bring you back in and look at this as a potential fit for you.
Yeah, that's probably the one to really think about the most is you that's who you're most likely going to look at is someone that not only based upon relationships or people that you run across in the recruiting trails, right? Like that's how the Jay Valai situation came to fruition. I believe Mike Reed, the cornerback coach there in Clemson, was one that BV was hoping to bring with him when he brought the entire cavalry, the Clemson cavalry here.
Clemson Click.
Yeah, exactly. He brought that entire crew with him when he left on the defensive side. Now, it's funny because I've seen people ask the question, would BV do that to Dabo? Dude, he did it to start. Todd Bates.
I want him to do that to Dabo.
Miguel Chavis.
It's all in the
right?
game.
Like he brought in literally people, he was bringing in Clemson folks, Ostolsky, he brought him in later as an analyst. So, Ted Roof joined him. He was actually there with them. Now, granted, people were mad about Ted Roof hire. I got it. Like you said, he needed to start somewhere. But with that being said, yeah, there is very little chance in my mind's mind is that BV cares about, that part of the relationship. He's going to bring in coaches that he can promote or ones that can help him. At this point, we're kind of removed. Let's do it. So the list is short to me on it. I think Xavier Brewer, Coach Brew is on there. I think he's one that they should definitely consider because he's been there since 2022. He may not have the most experience, but he's been out there coaching with them. So it's not like they've never seen him. They've been able to evaluate that. But like I said, Dominique Franks is an option. Gabe Lynn, who's a DB coach over there at UCLA, is one I've been thinking about because he's a former Sooner. And he's coached at Colorado. He's also coached, like I said, he's coached at UCLA now. He's been gaining some of that experience. Chip Vinny is one that everyone has been mentioning right now. I've been seeing some NFL names as well. I don't know if they go NFL route. Doesn't feel like to me, if they bring someone from the NFL, it feels like that NFL person is coming for one or two reasons. One, to understand the Brent Venables defense to try to build their own defense in the future, or two, they want to be a future DC. And I don't see the future DC component making much sense unless they're okay with going with a G5 type route to really start their play calling. I think that was probably the biggest struggle that Jay Valai had because it's kind of hard to get yourself hired for a position when they don't feel like you're not the one making all the plans and stuff. So there's a lot of combinations of stuff that could go there, but I'd say give me I don't mind a former Sooner personally either, especially if they got some experience. I think Mike Reed's probably the pick. Bring another Clemson one in, but at the same time, people will point out there, similar to any other, is that do you want to go with more complacency and potentially just, fizzle out like Clemson has been doing on defense? Now,
one could argue that the reason Clemson's been fizzling out on defense is because they no longer have Brent Venables.
Yep. That is a very fair argument, and that's probably the argument I would make.
So, Todd Bates has worked out pretty well. Miguel Chavis has been great, and that's a guy that was never a position coach until he came and worked for Brent Venables at Oklahoma, and that's worked out fantastic.
I have no problem with thinking about Xavier Brewer. We did it with Chavis.
Exactly. Yep.
Good shot.
Yeah. So, and that's why I'm like, whoever Brent Venables decides to give the job to, I feel pretty good about it because Brent Venables is pretty good defensive mind, and it's going to be
some days of the week,
similar vision. Yeah. Anyway. All right. Hey, 2025, we had several guys, Cortland Guillory, Torrey Blaylock, Michael Fasusi, Ryan Foje break out of that recruiting class. Well, who of that remaining group needs to step up and break out in 2026? We'll discuss coming up here on Locked On Sooners.
This is Mazda's moving the game forward for those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen. Like some of the biggest ones, let's talk about one I feel like when Aaliyah Chavis had raised the bar against the number 2 team in the country at the time, South Carolina, went out there and just balled out, especially in overtime, taking over. These moments reminds us of what it really takes to raise the bar. It's that extra work off the court, dialing in on every detail, giving it that extra fire and that grit, and I never quit. She didn't quit in that fourth quarter when she was cooking. It's one of those things that you ought to do as well. You don't want to quit, and when the moment gets tough, you want to take over in those moments. So we put that same passion into every model. Highlights make the real. What it took to get to there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
Once again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there tuning in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And wherever you get your podcast, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Google, Podbean, you can get ad-free audio access of Locked On Sooners. So you want to skip all the ads, you can do that for $5 a month, $50 per year over at the Locked On Everydayer Club, lockedonsooners.supercast.com. which is right here for you on the screen, lockedonsooners.supercast.com, $5 a month, $50 per year. You can also get a members-only invite to a group chat where you can talk with Jay and I, members of the Locked On community, all the everydayers around the world, and hosts across the network as well for just ball talk, just good old ball talk. And nothing better. You don't get to get around the water cooler and talk football. Well, you can do that in the Everydayer Club chat as well. So join us. $5 a month, $50 a year. LockedOnSooners.supercast.com. All right, Jay, we had a number of true freshmen have really good seasons for Oklahoma in 2026 or 5. They were a part of Oklahoma making the playoff. So who needs to take that next step out of the 2025 recruiting class?
Man, that one really was a tough one because the biggest challenge to me is what freshmen do we really expect to be massive contributors outside of the ones that we've already had, right? You had Fasusi, you had Foje, who ended up on that line, and they became dudes that, ended up, being super impactful to what Oklahoma's been trying to do. And so I'm thinking back on them like, all right, freshmen that really played, Cortland Guillory, Fasusi, Foje, and I'm like, well, is there anybody else that really has a chance to step up? Outside of them, it's going to be a challenge. But I think the one that needs it, the one that we all want it to happen for, Elijah Thomas at wide receiver. I think he's the one that if there's anybody, because we've heard so much great things about him on the practice field, he's probably the dude that we feel like we're ready to see change the game for this team. He's probably the one that should be right there ready to step up and step out. He was a top, basically borderline 100 player in the country, even out of Chakota, Oklahoma. People knew that he was an athletic freak and he has the potential. Now it's all about refining the game and getting out there and being really good in the flow of it. And so ET, that's the dude that I feel like now the breakout candidate, number one on my list right now. We're going to go with ET.
And he did all the dirty work for you. I mean, he played special teams.
Oh my goodness, he was so good at special teams too.
What did they talk about? If you want to roll, you want to earn an opportunity, come play special teams. And he did that. So I think this year he should be getting more consideration on the practice field for getting some first team reps when the offense is out on the field, not just scout team stuff, not just second team stuff, because he's an athlete. He's a really good athlete. He's fast enough. He's going to be able to make some plays for you. Get him into that, 6-man rotation at wide receiver. When you go 4 wide, figure out ways to get him on the field because he's a dynamic player with the ball in his hands. You want to use him in a similar way you did Isaiah Zatania, where you can get him the ball in the short area part of the field and just let him make plays after the catch. Like, that's a good way to get him involved. I think even if you don't want to have a fully expanded playbook for him this year, which I don't see why you wouldn't, figure out 10 plays, like 10 packages that you can use to get Elijah Thomas on the field. I think that's a great choice. And we need to start seeing those wide receivers produce. And that's not just on him. That's a Manny choice. Like, all these guys need to start stepping up and being the answer for when Satania is gone, Trell Harris is gone, and Jermichael Carter is gone after this year. For me, man, we've got to see the defensive line churn continue. Defensive line's been so good for Oklahoma. Grayson Halton, Dominic Williams, David Stone, Jaden Jackson. You're bringing back Stone and Jackson. You expect those guys to be your starters. Jackson at the nose tackle, David Stone at that 3 technique spot that lines up between the guard and the tackle. Both of those guys are going to be dynamic players. They're 2 of the best defensive tackles in college football. But who's going to be number 3 and number 4 in the rotation? Well, I think Trent Wilson needs to be that guy that steps up and finds a significant role. Okay. We saw Jaden Jackson break out as a true freshman in 2024. David Stone experienced his breakout in 2025. Now it's Trent Wilson's turn. He kind of sat, learned, watched the veterans in the rotation. Now it's an opportunity for him to go take a step and become a significant part of that rotation.
Yeah, I like that. Trent's been one that I've been really keeping my eyes on. The challenge for him is just about really the players around him, right? Like, I don't think it's a lack of talent, but he's also in a position where you got to come in with a certain size and a certain ability to move around with said size. And he made that, to me, I think the biggest thing with him was we need to get his weight up.
Yeah.
And I think we may have gotten him to that point. I'm ready to see what weigh-ins look like when we get closer to spring. That's going to be fun because when you start seeing that first roster drop, it's going to hit so hard. Yeah. Oh, it's going to be so exciting because then you can see those comparisons, what players look like back in 2025 at the end of the season and what they look like going into this year. Who's putting on those extra pounds and who's recovered from postseason surgeries and cleanups and stuff. That to me is going to be that's going to be a big deal. And I think Trent Wilson is one that, if he breaks out properly, good chance for it to be a problem.
We saw Jaden have another cleanup procedure, so there's no telling what his spring availability is going to be.
That's true.
So that's going to create opportunities for guys to get reps. And this is just an opportunity for Trent Wilson. If he's up to the 290, 300 range, I think he's going to be in a good spot to take some 3 technique reps. You got Kenny Ozawalu coming in. You've got Bishop Thomas coming in at defensive tackle. You got Nigel Smith potentially playing some inside more. So it's a bit of a logjam. He's going to have to go out and prove that he's ready to do that. But I think for this year and for the future, you got to start seeing those guys behind Stone and Jackson, those younger guys, really take some roles. Anybody else from that 2025 class you feel like? I think maybe Tristan Haynes. We kind of need to see him step up.
He was one that to me felt like probably another one on the defensive side that I think is really not talked about enough. I think Tristan Haynes, and honestly, as I think about it more, I'm going to switch that one. I'll let you keep Tristan Haynes. I think one that I've been kind of, making mention of, but now it looks like I think is really that time. Marcus James. If Marcus James, as a redshirt freshman, can come out here and be a big-time contributor at linebacker, right there with James Nesta right behind him, and that's your linebacker for the next 3 years. That would be huge for Oklahoma, to be able to have him as a redshirt freshman contribute as a sophomore and possibly a redshirt junior. And that puts him in a situation where he'd be ready to go to the pros. He comes in here at the size that you're looking for, as a linebacker. I mean, he's already like 6'4"-ish, if not closer to 6'5", 230 pounds. He's already a big dude, especially from the first set of weigh-ins as coming in as a freshman. That's one I'm really curious, because the linebacker room is the one that we've been the most curious about, right? That's the one that we've had the most questions about. But you still got Kip. You brought in Cole Sullivan. Now it's always about, all right, what's the depth going to look like? You lost Kobe. You lost Samuel Masigo. And you understood why. They weren't going to get a chance to start this coming year. They wanted to go somewhere where they were definitely a de facto starting player and can put up a whole bunch of tackle numbers to prep for the league if they decide to go, or get additional education, right? They've already got their degree from Oklahoma. Want to add something to the master's belt? Nothing wrong with that. Marcus James is one. He's big. He's fast enough. He's got the ability. Now we need to see him play as a big linebacker for Oklahoma.
Yeah, so the roster from the fall had Marcus James at 6'4", 235. So he's ready to go. Size-wise, he's ready. Like, he doesn't need to do much more. Just continue to fill out, get better, learn the playbook. And then I just wanted to mention Trent Wilson's size, according to the roster back in the fall, 6'3", 307. So
there you go.
He's ready to go size-wise. I think the Tristan Haynes thing is also important. Like, all these Carl Albert guys, Trinity Washington, Tristan Haynes, Marcus James, how great is it going to be when those dudes do begin to contribute in the same way Xavier Robinson? I think Oklahoma fans want Oklahoma kids to do well. And that Carl Albert connection, you want to see show out on Saturdays in Norman. That's going to be super fun.
It's going to be a great time, and we're going to enjoy every minute of it.
Yeah, and listen, there's going to be opportunity. We saw a guy like Devin Jordan, didn't really play much as a true freshman, but then he had a really good year in 2025 and was a significant part of your cornerbacks rotation. So, there's going to be an opportunity for guys like Tristan Haynes. And then here's the guy that we didn't mention, but is going to have a breakout season, Omarion Robinson at safety.
Oh, yeah, he will.
He's not going to start, but he's going to be a significant part of that safety rotation.
I think it's less about him needing to break out and more about we know he's gonna play.
He's going to break out. That's what I'm saying.
So he's going to break out. Like, he ain't got much of a choice, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a reason why they were out there rallying to get that man stay.
Yeah.
Make sure, right? I mean, he's got family in Arkansas, he's got a kid. So you would assume that he would go back closer to home. They had to find a way to make sure that man can stay because he's talented. He's gonna be fun to watch.
Well, if I don't know if you recall this, when we were at SEC Media Days in Atlanta and Brent Venables was asked which true freshman he's been impressed with, Omarion Robinson was a name that came up.
No, that's true. And he was one that was beloved.
Yeah, and Brent Venables isn't going to throw praise onto a true freshman very lightly. No. The other guys he talked about, Fasusi and Foje, they broke out and started a lot of games for you. So look for that Omarion Robinson breakout season coming in 2026. All right, coming up next, can the Oklahoma Sooners repeat their 10-2 game or 10-2 season? Which games are most likely potential losses for Oklahoma? We're not going to say going to be losses because, hey, they could run the table. Mm-hmm. Who knows? We'll see. We'll discuss all that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. If you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed Sponsored Jobs is the move, because instead of hoping the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit, specific criteria like skills, certifications, and location. That's always important. If I were hiring today, I wouldn't want just someone who can help. I've been looking for help, and I want someone who with real experience who could jump right in and help. And Indeed can be with that. That's what I like about Indeed. You can get specific and target exactly what you need. It saves time because you're spending less energy sorting through all the mismatches. And with sponsored jobs, your posts get seen by candidates who are actually a fit. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data, worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with Indeed sponsored job. Listeners of this show can get $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job to the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do the right way with Indeed.
Once again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Oklahoma Sooners went 10-2 in 2025. Shocked the world. Well, outside of Sooner Nation and many in Sooner Nation. Can they go 10-2 in 2026? Friends over at that SEC podcast actually believe that Oklahoma can go 10-2. Or early prediction to go 10-2 with losses at Georgia and at Florida.
I had a few folks not too happy about that, thinking, wait, you think we're going to lose to Florida? It's the Swamp. It ain't
Texas
that easy to go out there and win. Yeah, Texas got beat up going over there or whatnot. Yeah. So I always tell folks, it's okay to understand that there's a possibility if there's any place you're going to lose, will be to the Swamp.
Yep.
I am not upset about that. I totally understand it. So yeah, I could totally see that could be a place where we could end up taking a L potentially, but yeah, the Swamp feels like it. So when we look at the schedule here, John, this is kind of the schedule, for next season. That game down there, that Florida game in between the South Carolina and Ole Miss matchups is where they, like I said, they see the loss coming from. And then, of course, our first ever trip to Athens, Georgia. Now, to me, both Georgia now they're pretty mature as a roster. They're getting up there in age and they're getting more experienced. I'm curious could Oklahoma travel there? Because they're also traveling to Michigan. They're going to be in Ann Arbor. Even though they got a new staff, can Oklahoma pull off the upset and start the season 4-0 once again?
Well, the good thing about going to Michigan week 2 is that it sets you up a little bit better to go to Athens in week 4. You're not going to be as shell shocked by the environment had you played UTEP, Illinois State, New Mexico, and then had to go to Athens, right? So you're going to be battle tested, road tested early so that when you go and you have to play in Athens, it's not going to be, I'm not going to say it's not going to be as difficult. It's still going to be difficult. It's still going to be a challenge, but the atmosphere, the environment surrounding you is not going to be as shocking to the senses as it would have been had you played 3 straight home games to open the season. So that's the benefit of playing a big time non-conference game on the road. So much talk right now about softening non-conference schedules because the Big Ten is doing it. This is one of those benefits, is that it's going to get you better prepared to go to Athens, better prepared to go to the Swamp later in the season. So I don't know, man, that's going to be tough, dude. Georgia's a good team. They're the most consistent football team of the last decade. There's been nobody that has had as many 10-win seasons over the last decade as Georgia. They've been to the SEC title game like 7-8 years in a row. They've won 2 of the last, or back-to-back, and they've won 3 of the last 4. Like, Kirby Smart's legit, man. And he brings back Gunnar Stockton, who's really, really good. And that's going to be a really good team. So that's going to be tough, dude. So right now, if I'm looking at it, I would predict a loss for Oklahoma. And that's just out of respect for what Georgia is as a program. And I just don't feel like Oklahoma's there yet. They're building towards that. They're trying to achieve where Georgia's at. And so out of respect for Georgia, that's probably a place where I'd pick a loss. Later in the season at Florida, maybe not so much. Thankfully, that game is in November and not in September. So you're going down to Florida. Yeah, it might be a little bit warm, but it's not going to be August, September warm. And that's a big difference.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be a good warm because it's going to be a warm that you're actually interested in. It's going to be a warm that you actually want to be a part of because, like you said, it's in November. It's going to be cold here. It was cold in Tennessee. It was cold Alabama. It ain't gonna be cold in Gainesville. It's going to be a nice little, 70 to 60 to 70 degrees. You're going to have probably a slight breeze coming in. It's not going to be overly humid. It's going to be hot. It's going to be a little humid. It's going to be humid, but it's not going to be like overly. Like, you're not going to feel like you're going to die like you were playing there in September. Like, that's awful. Playing there in September is the worst thing you could possibly do to yourself. And, that's something I will petition to say should never, ever happen to this team. Like, we don't need to be playing there in September. Heck, I don't even like going to games here in September, let alone going down there for a game. But yeah, you're right. That's the best part about it is that you're not in a situation where you're playing a game where, like I said, you're going to cook. It's going to be more optimal. It's going to feel like football weather. You're like, man, it's feel like fall, like for real fall weather. It doesn't feel like, I'm going to die summer weather, or even it's going to feel like even possibly late summer weather right there as you prepare for winter. So yeah, I'm totally in agreement to that. The funny thing is, as much as I do respect, and I'm saying this with all due respect with Georgia or whatnot, we've been pretty darn good on the road.
We've been great on the road.
It seems like the thing this team, the road dog, the hard to kill mentality seems to show up, man. So to me, I think that we could be one of the few teams, well, actually similar to Alabama, who did it last season, pull up in Athens and cause problems and make them, work for it. Think that we possibly can. I think it could be a good, low-scoring, fun game. It's going to be a lot of hard hitting, something that we both like to do. But that one is the game I'm probably looking forward to the most, besides revenge against Texas again. That one is the one I'm looking forward to the most because I think that's going to be a very intriguing matchup of teams that will probably be the more veteran in conference.
Oklahoma's never been to Athens. That's incredible to me. And that's going to make that so much more fun. It's already got night game written all over it, right? Whether Oklahoma wins at Michigan or not, this just has night game in Athens written all over it. And they put on a great show down there as well. So the Texas game is always a coin flip. So erase what happened in 3 of the last 4 years. Doesn't matter going into this game. They're going to be 2 really good teams. It's going to be another really good game. I think Oklahoma is going to be better prepared for that one. Any other games on that schedule that you find less confidence in Oklahoma winning those games?
I honestly, one, Ole Miss is going to be a big time challenge. Good thing is back at home, even though we lost last time at home, but it shouldn't be the bad weather at home situation. It shouldn't be a brutal November. So that one's going to be intriguing. A&M, it's been a while. I know a lot of people are like, A&M, why would you think? Hey, that team was feisty last season, and Mike Elko is doing big things there. They're one that I am circling. That late season stretch is going to be very intriguing as you have your quote unquote rivals outside of Texas right there in line, going to the Swamp, having Ole Miss at the crib, having A&M at the crib, and then heading on to Mizzou for our Thanksgiving, rivalry week game, even though we're not rivals, but whatever. They want to be rivals with us. We don't really care that much, but that to me that's going to be a challenging game. It's going to be because I'm not sure what Marcel Reed's going to be. He should improve. He's shown improvement year over year.
Absolutely.
So he's going to be a challenge to bottle up. But the good thing is it's in November, so you'll have a much better idea of what he is when you get to that game.
The interesting thing with Texas A&M is they're going to have a new offensive coordinator, and they're going to have new weapons from Marcel Reed. Casey Concepcion is gone. What does that look like? How do they evolve as an offense? The defense is just up and down. I don't know ever really what to make of that Texas A&M defense. So many 5 stars, so many 4 stars on that unit, and yet sometimes it's not very good. So I don't know really what to make of them. Some sleeper games on that schedule are Mississippi State. I know you look at it and you're like, oh, Mississippi State, whatever. Kentucky, South Carolina. I think that October stretch after Texas are kind of the buyer beware kind of games. Like, if you underestimate these teams, they could put you in very uncomfortable situations. We saw Kentucky do it to Texas. We saw Mississippi State do it to Texas. And we know South Carolina will have some talent. And I think they're a prime bounce back candidate. I'm not going to predict them to go make the playoff or anything, but they could jump back up into like an 8-4, 9-3 situation with a better offensive line in front of Lenora Sellers. So that's going to be an interesting stretch. That's going to be the don't lose focus stretch, right?
Yeah. That's the one. Don't lose
focus. Especially if you beat Texas. If you beat Texas, you got to come out of that one guns blazing, foot to the,
pedal to the metal, baby.
Metal. Thank you. You've got to have all your ducks in a row. You cannot sleep on any of those. And then that November stretch, man, it doesn't look as daunting as this year's November stretch, but still games that could trip you up because it's SEC football. There's not a game out there that's like automatic dub. I mean, you could probably predict it, but you got to go win them.
You got to go win them. That's what's most important. Got to win the game. We play to win the game. And hello.
Thank you. And then playoff. We'll talk about playoff because Oklahoma's going to make the playoff again in 2026. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports. Go check out his channel, Unfair Sports, for more Oklahoma Sooners and college football coverage. You can follow me at John9Williams and read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. The show is at Locked On Sooners on all of your favorite social media platforms. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. We'll talk to you then. Boomer
Sooner.